Hi, this is Alex with Maple Leaf Coffee Roasters in Roselle. I'm here today to talk about our September Club Coffee, a natural processed coffee from Rwanda. Check it out. So as a reminder to everyone, the way our club coffee program works, members of the club get access to a club-only members coffee that we roast one of three different ways and send out a whole bunch of extra information and notes and detail about the coffee, along with recommendations for who might like different the roast levels. And we like to use the club coffee program as a way to give people a chance to explore some different types of coffees, some different processing methods, things of that nature. And this month and last month, we did one of my favorite experiments where I bring in the same coffee 2 months in a row and have one as a wash process and one as a natural process version of the exact same coffee. So my intention with this kind of experiment is to give people who may not have a chance to try the different types of processing methods a very direct interaction with the same coffee roasted the same way, and to demonstrate what the different processing methods do to the flavor. And this month and last month, we had a Rwandan coffee in, which is a fun way to kind of highlight an African coffee in two different processing methods to give people that up close and personal feel for what these two different processing methods will do to the flavor of the coffee. So last month we had the wash processed coffee, and this month we have the natural process. And I'm really excited this month because we get a chance to do that side-by-side comparison of those two different coffees and show what that different processing method does to how this coffee kind of tastes in whatever way that people kind of take it home and do something with it. So we have our normal light, medium, and dark. And I'm going to talk about the roast profile for a little bit first, because most importantly, last month and this month, I tried to roast these coffees in the exact same way or as close as possible so that we can remove some of the process that the roasting does to the coffee and give people a chance to get a sense of what that kind of wash and natural process does to the flavor of the coffee. So we got really close. In fact, the overall coffee roast in terms of the percentage of time that it spends in the different phases was almost identical for all three roasts, with a very slight variation in the dark roast territory. So I think we did a really good job at trying to remove some of the effects that the roast has on the flavor of the coffee month over month. So this coffee for both all three roast profiles turned very much more into what you generally expect out of a natural processed coffee. It's lighter, it's sweeter, it's fruitier. It's something that has a bit less body to it in all three roast levels compared to the prior month. But it still has that kind of exotic feel to it that you would get and expect out of an African coffee, especially one that is a natural processed coffee too. So on the light roast side, this is where the kind of lighter, sweeter expectation that I have for an African coffee came in. Has kind of a mild spice to it, something you normally see out of a lot of African coffees, while still having the kind of fruitiness to it that you normally see. It has kind of like a peach tendency to it, with a little bit of like a pastry feel. It's not quite like eating a Danish, but maybe there's some similarities there too. At points, I kind of saw something that would be equivalent to taking out a fresh batch of blueberry muffins out of an oven and smelling that, and that was an interesting exotic sort of feel. This did have one of the types of fruitiness to it that I don't normally see out of coffees from Africa, except for coffees from Yemen, which is a kind of banana tone. So we've sourced some coffees from Yemen before in the roaster that have been very small numbers, small amounts that I've pulled in. And those are the only ones that I've been able to really see the kind of like yellow banana sort of feel out of it. And it kind of reminds me at points of like what a banana Laffy Taffy sort of tastes like. So it's not a super strong fruit forward coffee, but that banana kind of blueberry muffin peach feel is definitely there. The medium roast turned a little bit heavier, as you would normally expect. This is one that, quite frankly, I struggled with to really articulate what I was feeling and sensing in this coffee. Complexity in coffee can be kind of a double-edged sword, especially for me, the person kind of trying to describe it to people, because if you get a really complex coffee like this one, your experience with it is going to be maybe very different than what mine is, and I try not to influence the thinking for people taking this coffee home too much. And this is where it really got tough, because in this coffee, it has more of a mellow, creamier, buttery texture to it than the light roast, but it's not quite something that I can put like my finger on really in trying to describe sort of how it tastes. So has kind of a nuttiness, a little bit of like a juicy tendency of finish as well. not heavy, especially compared to the wash process coffee. This was a lot lighter of a feel to it, but it just had something a little bit different almost every sip that I took. And I really kind of got to the bottom of the cupping cup with this guy, and I was like, man, I really don't know how to describe this coffee, so I'm going to be interested to see what people get out of the medium roast for those that select it, and kind of learn a little bit of what they might have seen in this coffee that I didn't pick up on when they take it home. On the dark roast side, this kind of turned into what you would normally expect for a dark roast natural process coffee. You still get the kind of weight that you normally conventionally will see in a dark roast coffee. So it has the kind of cherry roasty tones in it, but not as heavy of a roasty feel as what you would see out of another African coffee or a Central American coffee for that matter. It has the kind of peach tendency a little bit in this one too, but it's much more mellow as a comparison. Compared to the wash process from last month, the chocolatey notes were still there, but they weren't the same kind of chocolate flavors that we saw out of the dark roast form of the wash process last month. So it had a much more, the heaviest body out of the three of this month, but not the kind of heaviness that we saw in last month's. Still had a rich texture to it, kind of a burnt brown sugar sort of tone as well, and had a kind of refreshing finish to it, which is not something I would normally expect to see out of a dark roast coffee. Usually dark roast coffees, the finish is kind of heavy and maybe a little creamy if you get lucky. This one had kind of a lightness to it that was a combination of like a dark roast coffee with a refreshing feel without being too in your face. So I think each one of these has something really interesting going on. The complexity that all three have in this flavor profile is really hard for me to say one way or another who's going to like which of these. I think I really struggled with these three coffees this month to put labels on too much of what I was tasting, but they have something very different happening almost with every sip of the cup. And I think that that's really something fun and something you don't normally get a chance to try, especially compared to the previous month's coffee. So if you still have some of the last month's coffee and you can kind of do a side-by-side comparison with this at home, I would definitely recommend doing that for those of you in the club. If this is something that you find interesting to try, we do have some open slots every once in a while in the club coffee program. So if you're interested in giving this a shot, just drop us an email and we'll be glad to add you to a wait list. So with that being said, we'll see you next month for another great club coffee. Take care.